Factsverse presents Couple Reunites After Half a Century to Find Long-Lost Daughter. Tragic love tale. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all our videos. Do you believe in soulmates? Or at least magical surprises? Well, wait until you hear the story we have lined up for you. You might change your perspective on the subject. Like any other mushy stereotypical love tale, you might think this is one of them, right? You couldn't be more wrong. Join us as we tell a particularly exciting tale of love, which might lead you to believe that love eventually finds a way. At first glance, the romance between Dennis Vinar and Karen Lehman was your ordinary high school teenager romance. They never thought they would even see each other after they graduated, let alone 50 years later into their adulthood. The surprise was left to them all 5 decades later through the vast and narrow of life. It does not come as a shock to us that Dennis Vinar was a sports enthusiast and, predictably, the athletic type. As a sports star, he was famous in his hometown of Northfield, Minnesota, which at the time only had 700 residents. The talented, athletic, and good-looking teenager was a sports star in his area. He was the high school star of Brownton, Minnesota. At the tender age of 15, Vinar could have any lady whom his heart desired. Well, that was until he found the perfect girl to tug on his heartstrings in ways he never thought possible. It was a shy and reserved girl, Karen Lehman. Karen Lehman was quite the opposite of Dennis. While he was popular, she was shy, not to mention younger. She loved to play wind instruments and clearly had a passion for playing the clarinet. She was in the same high school as Dennis Vinar and even lived in the same town. She fell madly in love with Dennis, and Dennis reciprocated. For two starstruck young lovers, they were on top of the world, and nothing else mattered. We admit first relationships are hard to comprehend, more so at a young age. The intensity of the emotions is hard to wrap your head around, let alone the actions and reactions of your significant other. When talking about her age at the time she fell in love with Dennis, she said she was intrigued because he was popular. She fell in love with him at only 13 years old. The teenagers' romance progressed from season to season, and they fell deeper in love with each passing day. Dennis, the high school football star, put Karen above everything else. He admitted to being late for football practice because he would walk Karen home every day, and to him, this was more important than football practice. However, not all was as it seemed. After 2 whole years of dating and courtship, life was about to throw some tests their way. Their love was about to be put to the test. 2 years was a long time, and after all this while, Dennis was getting ready to graduate high school at the age of 17. Karen was only 15, and the bombshell? She was pregnant. Falling in love in the 60s, the two lovers loved to plan their future lives together and how it would be. It seemed like that was about to happen very quickly. Can you even imagine how life was in the 60s? There was no access to much information, and especially the kind of information about pregnancy. At 17 and 15 years old, what were their choices? They decided to try and be mature as a 17 and 15-year-old can be. They gathered the guts to tell their parents. Their parents were not pleased. Not in the least, and especially Karen's father. It's easier these days. In those days, teenage pregnancies, and especially out of wedlock, was a difficult pill to swallow. The parents of these two lovebirds were not supportive. It's hard to become a grandparent when your child gets to that milestone earlier than expected, and especially if you firmly believe in marriage first. Their parents were overwhelmed and saddened by the news, especially since in those days, the manner of handling such issues was very traditional. Karen had put forward plans for her future. Becoming a mother was among her plans, but they were well after she graduated high school and finished her college degree. Her parents had made it clear that becoming a mother so early was not the path they wanted their daughter to follow. Not wanting to give up on their love, Dennis Vinar happily proposed to the love of his life. He had realized that marrying Karen was on his timeline, but it didn't really matter when. Karen felt the same way. Get married to a man she loved and settled down. However, this was not to be. Karen's father rejected the proposal, and the teenagers were left with no say in the matter. While we do appreciate Dennis for doing the right thing, he was forced to stay away from the mother of his child. Karen's parents were angry and disappointed that she wanted to settle down so soon. Soon after, Karen was sent off to a maternity home. She had no choice in the matter. It was good for Karen to be in an environment where so many other girls were in the same condition. She was prepared for the pregnancy and life after pregnancy. Her life after the pregnancy was never to be the same again. Her forbidden love for Dennis and the fact that her baby would be given up for adoption soon after birth devastated Karen. At that moment, it seemed she was forced through her pregnancy alone, kept away from her love, and having to give up her child after birth. Being kept away from each other was enough, wasn't it? We hope so. The two lovebirds found their way to each other again. Hoping to cement their love, Dennis proposed, yet again, to Karen. When she went home to tell her parents, they did not approve at all. Dennis went through hell to be with her. He would not give up. However, whatever plans the two lovers might have had were disrupted when Dennis and his family moved away soon after. He then prepared to draft to the Army. Karen prepared herself for college. Is your heart breaking yet? Ours surely is. They kept in touch by writing to each other until one day the letters stopped and they both moved on. Whether or not they wanted to, they were forced to choose different paths. After the letters stopped, Karen thought it was because Dennis had forgotten all about her. Boy, was she wrong. Later on, they both ended up at the University of Minnesota, and at this time they were irrelevant to each other. Karen got her degree in interior design, and so did Dennis. They had both settled down and had families of their own. After a friend invited Dennis to join LinkedIn in 2014, the first thing he did was look up Karen Lehman. After all these years, he had not forgotten her. And how sure was he it was the same Karen Lehman he knew all those years before? He found her on LinkedIn, smacked his hands, and knew it was her when he saw her profile picture. After 5 decades, the two started chatting and met up 3 months later. With the invention of social media, it was much more comfortable than in the 60s where they could only write to each other. Dennis was now divorced and Karen had lost her husband some years before. 50 years, 3 months, and 2 days later, Dennis decided to put an end to his misery of half a decade. He proposed and asked Karen to marry him. She said yes. We are literally tearing up at this point. Dennis had never forgotten about Karen. He never thought he would reunite with his high school sweetheart. He explained the feeling as absolutely wonderful. Dennis had told Karen it would complete his life if they found their daughter and remade the family that was taken from them so many years before. This was what Karen needed to hear. Together, they started looking for their daughter. At this point, nothing would stop them. While they were sure their daughter had been adopted by a good family, they wondered who she was. Dennis put his degree in English to use and wrote a letter to the adoption agency to explain their situation. Lo and behold, they found their daughter was called Jean Voxland. When Jean discovered her parents were looking for her, she was shocked. Can you imagine meeting your parents in your 50s? She teared up, and upon meeting her parents, it was ultimately the best day of her life. Dennis and Karen see their daughter regularly, and for the first time in a long while, Jean feels like she has a family. Do you have a personal story that you can relate to this one? Leave us a comment below, and of course, please don't forget to subscribe to Facts Verse for more content and videos. Thank you.